Thank you so much for making time for the first session of Peralta Online Equity Conference. We are really excited to have Shantia Kerr with us, and she will be talking about using AI and digital tools for fair and equitable assessment. AI, this is something we are really, really interested in these days, right? And a little bit intimidated, to be honest, for me, but I'm really, really excited to listen to Shantia. But before I pass the microphone to her, I would like to remind you a few items. Please make sure that you are muted throughout the session. And if you have any questions, please use the chat box so that we can share it with the presenter towards the end. Also, this session is being recorded and it will be posted on YouTube afterwards. So if you don't want to be seen in the recording, please turn off your webcam throughout this session. And we are using captions. So if you would like to use the captions, you can look at the bottom of your screen and hide or show the caption option you can choose. And I think that's all the reminders I have for today. So Shantia, whenever you're ready, you can take over.
Hey, good morning, and thank you for having me, and thank you all for showing up early this morning. I am really grateful to see you all here and hope that we can um, learn from each other, actually. But I'll get started. Today, we'll be talking about equitable assessment, what it means, and also what tools, AI and other digital tools we can use to ensure that our assessment is fair and equitable. A little bit about me. I am a professor at the University of Central Missouri. I teach in our educational technology program where we have an undergraduate minor and a graduate certificate in online teaching and learning, as well as a master's and specialist degree in educational technology. We have emphasis areas of adult learning and corporate training, general education technology, and learning technologies. Our program is fully online and it has been fully online since 2008. Just a little background, and we're all here. So either we all know a bit about equitable learning or we all want to learn a little bit about equitable learning. But equitable learning occurs when every learner belongs, contributes, and thrives regardless of race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status. This is one of the definitions, and I really like this definition. We just want for all of our learners to be in a space where they are able to learn and the conditions are appropriate for learning and for them to thrive. And so, why does equity in assessment matter? And I have this graphic from Educate, Radiate, and Elevate, and I like it. And it just really describes or briefly mentions some of the things that can contribute to the achievement gap, which include racial discrimination, unhelpful educational environments. We want for our educational environments to be one that is safe, where students feel free to learn, right? Growing up with trauma, undiagnosed learning disabilities. I read that 40% of learning disabilities are undiagnosed in early childhood. And so this can also impact the achievement gap. The financial effect of COVID-19, we all are familiar with COVID-19 and understand that there were some achievement gaps that occurred as a result of it. And some of the financial effects had to do with whether or not some students had access to internet access, or even a parent being in the home, food insecurities, just some of the conditions that can affect the achievement gap. And of course, English as a second language also has some impact as well. And so, why does it matter? Why does equity in assessment matter continue? Um, this is continued. So, there are different types of biases. I list some, but not all. But there's racial, ethnic, gender, socioeconomic status, cultural bias that can happen within an assessment, confirmation bias, where the teacher might selectively interpret or remember information, and that confirms their existing beliefs, or even method bias. And one example of a socioeconomic bias that could happen in assessment is that, so for example, if a student from a low income background who's never traveled outside of their state, and this might sound like interesting, but there are students who have never traveled outside of their city, much less their state, or even, even further. But if there is a test and a student perform, this specific student performs poorly on that test that includes travel, a leisure vacation, spring break, like what did you do? Where did you go? Different things, different travel, vacation scenarios. These may be very unfamiliar to a student, and but more relatable to the wealthier students. And so again, this exam might adversely affect, the student from the lower income. So what is assessment bias? Assessment bias is when assessments unfairly penalize a group of students due to various issues and differences, instead of measuring that student's knowledge. And so, similar to the example where we just shared, it's not necessarily their knowledge, but they might be penalized because of their experiences that they have not had. So this occurs when an assessment is representative of a single culture and doesn't necessarily represent multiple groups. Okay. And I am not in the chat, so if there's something, please let me know. This is another example of an assessment bias. Thank you. And so this is, in all of these, I'm going to share a QR code. So if you wanted more of the examples or more of anything, this came from an article, then you'll definitely have access to those. But so for this example, and I don't typically read, but I'll read most of this. Dr. M, a white mid-career female physician, supervises two medical students. And so basically, one is from a very similar background as Dr. White, and as Dr. M, and then the other student is from Mexico. So one is similar to Dr. M, has a similar background, and the other one does not. But both students perform pretty well in educating patients about new medication. However, student W, who has the similar background, uses some of the same phrases that Dr. M is familiar with and that she typically uses. And as a result, that student scores higher than the other student. And so Dr. M's assessment was influenced by their shared identity. And so these are just things that we want to consider as we are looking at assessments, right? And so this case illustrates how subjective evaluations, especially in tests, without clear standards, can perpetuate bias and be harmful. And then I think I had maybe one or two more, but this one is method of bias. And so at the end of an assessment in a history class, students are required to write a timed essay in English, but there's an English language learner who understands the concepts but doesn't necessarily express their self in writing, and especially in English writing, very quickly. And so this student is marked down for lack of clarity and depth, even though they really do understand the concepts, but just and a strong understanding of verbal discussions and group work. But because of their writing, they aren't able to necessarily write as quickly, especially in English, then that particular test would prove to be disadvantageous for them. And so, again, just some of the considerations that we'll consider as we are looking at assessment and biases. And then I think this is our last one, and this is just a student, a recent immigrant, avoids answering questions and speaking up unless they are directly called on, and their communication style is more formal. It's a little bit different from maybe what the classmates are doing. And so the teacher, Mr. Jones, he values assertiveness. He values students that are quick to raise their hands, whether they are asked directly or not. He values that frequent participation and assumes that the student that is an immigrant is disengaged or unmotivated when that is not the case. And so, again, just an example of how cultural communication could possibly impact the grade, impact the participation grade. And so why does all of this matter, right? Like why does assessment, why does bias equity matter? And what we're really hoping to do is to um, reduce the achievement gap. So you see the in the middle, like there's this big gap. And so we are trying to reduce the gap from one student on the left side to the student on the right side and just ensure that learning, education, assessment is equitable for all students, that all students are able to learn in a fair and equitable manner. And so, some considerations, of course, are technology access, which we briefly mentioned that, teacher presence, workspace, and internet connected device, just some things that we can consider in terms of being equitable. And then, in terms of the classroom, and these are just a few. There are lots of different things that we can do to ensure equity in the classroom, but student choice and assessments, multiple assessments, accessible materials, clear expectations, and guarding against some of those implicit biases. So student choice and assessments, this is an example from one of my classes. I teach a class on like multimedia development for learning or something. It's a summer class that I teach. And so one of the things that I do in that particular class is I give different options, right? So for this particular week, I think this was week 3, they had the option to create like an audio file for a podcast or the starting of to start a podcast, or they might want to do the book creation planning task. Well, they start their journey from an idea to an actual self-published book, and all of the steps are included, and they have to like plan. So it's really gives students an opportunity to, go see what their interests are as well as their learning style. So you have some that really go all in with their audio file podcast initiation creation. They love it. And then you have some who um, they might be like the student in the other example that we mentioned, who would be more geared toward book creation. But we like to give examples and the different choices for them. And of course, that does sometimes mean a little bit more for the faculty member because, yep, it does say week 3, because the faculty member then has to create, in this instance, rubrics and make sure that the students are prepared and have all that they need. So the faculty member will have to create rubrics, although there are tools that we will talk about for sure that will help you create your rubrics and to provide the different options for students. So, and multiple assessments, right? So this was the one we just looked at was giving students choice. They have some autonomy in their learning, but you also can also do, you want to have multiple assessments so that students are not simply graded or assessed on one assignment or maybe even two. And again, this will accommodate different learning styles. Acknowledges different barriers and strengths, and just really provides a more comprehensive view of student learning. Um, and again, ongoing feedback. So it's not just one item, there is multiple. And this will also help to limit bias in assessment. As we're doing materials and creating different things, something that we definitely want to consider is accessibility and accessible materials, and one that really sticks out to me. All of them are very important. Color and contrast is also a really big one, but just making sure that that students can clearly see what what you are creating. Images, you want to make sure that that there's the alternate text for students, and like plain English. We don't want to use idioms or uh, the language that might not be familiar to all students. And this could be not just students from other countries, but sometimes there are local colloquialisms and things that another student might not be familiar with. So, just some of the things that we want to consider as we are making sure that our instruction and our assessment is fair and equitable. So, let's look at a few technologies that will support equitable assessment. So, Magic School is one, and I would imagine, are you all familiar with Magic School? Every time I go to Magic School, there is something completely different or new that they have added to it. But this is really good for curriculum development, standard alignment, and also for grading, rubrics, and all sorts of things you can do within your Magic School. Yeah, so even like there's the text scaffolder, the IEP generator, again, text translator. And so these are, again, very useful tools for for your assessments and for your instruction in general. And so again, in Magic School, you have the text dependent questions and your rubric generator, which will allow you to just create rubrics. And of course, sometimes you have to go in and modify them, but just an example. So if you do choose to give choices and you have two or three choices, this would be helpful to a faculty member or a K2 through 12 teacher, as well as you are creating different assignments, but then also providing the different assessments for your students, especially for those like project-based learning assignments. Um, and so here are just a few others that, and I won't go through each and every one, but we'll look at a few of them, and then you'll have again the opportunity to go back and look at some of them as well. So we can look at, can try grade scope. I have it open. Grade Scope is one that you can use, and I think sometimes they've changed their pricing. So that is one of your institution wants to invest in, uh, um, would be a good one to use, and they help you create assessments and grading them as well. Another one we'll look at. I have CurryPod. Yeah, we'll look at CurryPod. CurryPod is one that will, if someone is a K through 12 teacher, it can include some of the standards, but there you have your different subjects, your different grades that you can choose. There's language, there are different types of questions that you could do. And I think the best thing to do would be to just kind of explore all of them. And so, because I teach typically K through 12 teachers, most of the things that we use have some type of freemium version. And so, which is what we're using. So it's open. But one of the things I like about CareerPod is their inspiration area. So, which is where we are now. And so, if there was something specifically that you wanted to, get inspiration from or about, you could go in their exams and tests and just different areas that you could explore, right? In CurryPod. There's also a place for reports, and that also shows you across the board, like how students are doing and other areas that you would need to that you would need to work on. EduAid AI is another one. And so this one, it puts me in the mind just of like the way it feels a little bit of our magic school, but it's a little bit different. It has lots of areas on assessment, and so like here we're in assessments, and there's another opportunity for rubric development. There is opportunity for it to create exams. uh, Quizzes. There was one, yeah, the oral exam. And so you can use these AI tools to help you with your assessment and also to think about um, the different learning styles and different other areas that you want to assess. So there's formative, they have summative, and we know that sometimes they can be used for both, but just as an option for 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 teachers to use, right? The holistic rubric, just this is one that is pretty popular, and that was the AI, the EduAid AI. Of course, you have your Kahoot or your quizzes, and so you want to, okay, I had to sign in, I had to update my my browser right before, so some of it, the different areas logged out, but just again, a lot of us are familiar with quizzes, but it just again gives you an opportunity to, and there's an AI component here as well, but just again, just the digital tools you can explore. Um, you can explore the different options, and then there's reports, there's data. We're all typically data driven, and so just and again, opportunities. I teach a Google certification course, educator certification course. And so I do have some quizzes there, but yeah, so just another option. Star Grader used to be another tool, but Star Grader also gives you same thing. You can play around with it, explore it, and create rubrics, create exams. You're able to do different things with StarGrader. It used to be, I think, AI. It was AI assessment or something along those lines, but now it's different. And we're going to look at all of the generative, the like the Chat GPT, Poe, Gemini, all of those as well. Diffit allows for differentiation of different assignments, which again will help make learning equitable and teaching equitable. And so it will, you can add in what you want, and it'll give you different options for differentiating your teaching, your instruction, and that will also help with making sure everything is equitable. So we won't go through each and every one. I do want to allow times for questions or discussion if there is, but we'll discuss, some of them, and you will have again access to all of them as well. Digital portfolios. I really like digital portfolios if they align with what you are doing, because it, of course, measures over time. It can be representative and developmental. And so on the right, you have different options for your portfolio if you wanted to create a portfolio. So, of course, your course management system, your learning management system will likely have some, and it may have an option. We just moved to Brightspace from Blackboard and Blackboard Ultra, and so now Brightspace has a portfolio option. Before that, we typically use Google Sites is our option for digital portfolio. And also Canva has a free portfolio and website builder, which might be really good for your teachers. A lot of our, or your students, a lot of our and I say teachers because I again teach teachers, but and I also yeah, I mostly teachers, but a lot of us are familiar, a lot of our students are familiar with Canva. And so you're also able to do um, create a portfolio with Canva as well, generating content with media and AI. And we do talk to our students. I personally, when ChatGPT came out, I personally, and in my program, we were very open to students using AI as a tool to support their learning, to scaffold their learning. And so my syllabus always, since this come out, has always included it. But you do want students to be mindful. We don't want them copying, directly something from AI, but it definitely can be used as a support. And so again, for digital portfolios, um, it is very helpful. And so these are just some of the different tools, and there's so many, so many, from WordPress to Portfolium, and lots of schools use Portfolium as well. Universities as use Portfolium, or just different options that you can use. But what I like about it, especially in terms of assessment, is that it shows just a variety of artifacts. Students can showcase their learning as they desire and as they see fit, what works best for them. Again, their own ownership and autonomy. I think students always do well when they are directly involved in their learning, of course. And usually the portfolios include some sort of self-reflection or assessment, which also um, impacts learning as well. So as you are assessing the students, they are also able to do their own self reflection and assessment. So again, there are many sites that can be used, but these are just some of the sites that are pretty popular with. I do have an account, but anyway, that are pretty popular with uh, portfolios and the creation of portfolios. Um, I have, and there's a link to just some different chats that you can use, some prompts that you can use for teachers, because we know now that it is all about the prompt. So how are we including, inputting our prompts? So if you were using like a generative AI, if you are using ChatGPT, Claude, or Poe, or Gemini, which poll will give you different ones. But if you're using like any of those, you want to be able to consider the different prompts and making sure that you're putting, your appropriate prompts in. And you can put some in that will help you with your that will help you with your feedback and with your assessments and making sure that it is equitable. And so I do have a list of time saving prompts for teachers. And just as you all remember to, when you're doing your prompts, you want to include that in there as well. Include, if you're creating an essay or essay assignment, you would want to possibly include a prompt about ensuring that it is equitable as it is being created. And a lot of them also will include data analysis and data analytics. Even some of the ones that we've used for a long time now, we've used like quizzes and Kahoot and some of the like more game-based learnings. They also have analytics in them as well. And so we want to take advantage of all of the tools and all of the resources that are available to us. And again, like with Poe, this is just gives you an opportunity to go to different d- generative generative tools. And so with that, you can get one prompt, you can put something in and get a prompt, and then Poe allows you to ask, a different tool, something else as well. So you would have an opportunity to explore more than Claude or Gemini. You could do it all within the same setting. And so Like I said, I do want to have time for questions if we have any, but final considerations as we're thinking about equity, we want to look at education equity to just be sure that we're giving every student what they uniquely need to succeed. We looked at and we talked about students' cultural difference, students' language difference, students' racial, financial, just all of the differences. We want to try to make sure that we give students every single opportunity to succeed. I do personally believe that every child can learn, every student can learn, and it is up to me to figure out what is the best um, route for them. Uh, and of course, we talked about educational equality, the achievement gap, education equity gap, and underserved students. Students who don't receive the same opportunities as their peers. Most commonly, they are minority, low income, disabled, or English language learning students. LGBTQ plus students, foster students, rural areas, and there are so many more considerations that we have for our students. And so as we are creating instruction and assessment, we do want to be mindful of that. And so assessment bias has the potential to affect a learner's education, future career, and sense of self-worth. This was from an article that I read, and I thought that was such a profound statement on not just education, but how assessment bias has the potential to truly impact our students and our learners. This quote, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. And so, again, I do truly believe that students can learn, all students can learn, which is why um, I have the different examples for assessment, the different options that students can use, and really try to create an environment where students can flourish. And I understand, even with discussion boards, we didn't talk about it, but even with discussion boards, because in an online environment, discussion boards are still very important, but students have an opportunity they can do voice memos, they can type, they can do video, and they do use all the different the different options. But you just want to ensure that you're providing an environment that the learners, the students can bloom and excel in that particular space and environment. If you wanted the quiz, but I know the slides, and I know they'll be online as well. But before I knew that, I had a QR code for you to go to if you needed a copy of the exact slides, which might be helpful anyway, because you can click through it and actually explore all of the different resources that were available and that were mentioned. And so I'm going to stop and just, if there are any questions or comments or any additions, any tools that you have, please do share.
Thank you so much for this presentation, Shanta. It's really amazing, and I would like to say that equitable grading was a big thing just even before those AI tools, and now it's maybe more important now since we have all those tools. It's a little bit overwhelming, but at the same time, I plan to go back to the recording and just look at each one of the resources you shared. And yeah, I'm really excited about that. And speaking of the recordings, you will see the YouTube channel in the chat. Please subscribe. You will have access to all our recordings, not only this year, but previous years as well. And I see a few people's hands is up. And T.L. Brink, maybe we should get started with you.
Yes, I teach entirely online for the San Bernardino Community College District. I have some students who are first generation, single parents. They're working long and difficult shifts as a CNA or an EMT. And I want to know, how can we better equitably serve those students, especially when it comes to access to some of the great online tools that you've talked about, and specifically their access and ability to use all the new iterations of AI. It seems to me that they have numerous disadvantages compared to, say, a middle-class child who's a full-time student with two college-educated parents. What specific suggestions can you give me for my disadvantaged students?
And I always think when I think about adult learners in your situation and in all situations, in many situations, adult learners have multiple competing responsibilities, right? A lot of times they're working. Sometimes they have parents that they are looking after. Sometimes they have children. They have multiple competing responsibilities. So, as a faculty member, we definitely have to be mindful of our adult learners. In terms of access, one of the things I would encourage you to do is to see if maybe the libraries, public libraries actually, as well as the university libraries have typically have access hotspots and just different technological resources that students can use. You would really be surprised at some of the resources that the public library has, but university libraries as well oftentimes have resources for students to use. I also always encourage, like I mentioned briefly, the freemium, free, FREE, freemium versions, because again, students, I don't take it for granted that students are, like I said, that they're adult learners, that they are paying for their education a lot of times, and sometimes they have to get books and different resources. So many of the resources that I mentioned have free versions. And so I would encourage those. And you can do some wonderful things with those free versions, even like a chat GPT. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to pay for uh, the upgraded version. Magic School would be a good resource as well for you, not necessarily for your students, but for your students, I would encourage you to look at the different free options of different technologies, and then also encourage them to research the availability of their public libraries as well as those at the university, the library and other resources available. I mean, you would be like, I know the library, local libraries, they also have recording um, cameras and laptops, many resources. So that is definitely something that I think you should explore in an effort to bridge that divide. And I also briefly, TL, I have to give you kudos for acknowledging your students and what they are going through. I think so often it goes above us, the day-to-day that our students are going through, what they're doing and what they're trying to do in order to make a difference in their own lives. So yeah.
Thank you, Shantia. And I know a couple more people had their hands up a while ago, but I'm not sure if it was the same question with TL's question. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions, or you can use the chat box to share your questions with the presenter. Yes, and also Jim mentioned that California community colleges support students with some hotspots and other tools, laptops, tech support, workshops, and labs. Yes, yes. TL, I'm not sure if you're located in California, but yes, this is something that is, offered to California community colleges. And thanks for the reminder, Jim. If we don't have any other questions, I would like to thank Shantia again and for this amazing session. I know we're gonna all go back to recordings and watch it again to write down all the tools. And our next session will start at 9 a.m. in Zoom room A. I put it in the chat. And again, feel free to come to our session. First, we're going to start with Chancellor's speech. And then afterwards, we're going to have another amazing session about AI. What AI prompts would Darwin write? Crafting equitable online teaching and learning practices to help learners adapt to global changes. So it's going to be in Zoom Room A, and hope to see you again there. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.